Welcome, friends. This is A Course in Miracles Palm Beach Study Group. Today we're on Chapter 14, Section 11, The Test of Truth. In the book, it's on page 296 in the text. Yet the essential thing is learning that you do not know. Knowledge is power, and all power is of God. You who have tried to keep power for yourself have lost it. You still have the power, but you have interposed so much between it and your awareness of it that you cannot use it. Everything you have taught yourself has made your power more and more obscure to you. You know not what it is, nor where. You have made a semblance of power and a show of strength so pitiful that it must fail you. For power is not a seeming strength, and truth is beyond semblance of any kind. Yet all that stands between you and the power of God in you is but your learning of the false and of your attempts to undo the true. So he's talking to a person who is steeped in ego and has no understanding of their spiritual reality. And basically, he's just talking about the difference between spiritual reality and ego illusion. So the essential thing is that we do not know what we truly are when we are steeped in the ego. Knowledge is power. That's the same as saying spirit is power. And all of power is with God. And those of us who have tried to keep power to ourselves have lost it. That's because by keeping to the power to ourselves, we're separating ourselves from God. And that's how we created the ego. And so in the ego, we don't understand that we're spiritual beings. And consequently, it appears that we have lost our power. But then sentence 4 says, but you still have the power because we are spiritual beings and we still have the power, but we've interposed so much between it, well, not so much of the ego into our awareness that we can't use the power that we have when we're in the ego reality. And so everything you have taught yourself, that's ego thinking, makes our power more obscure. And so our power fails us when we're operating from the ego. Yet all that stands between you and your ego self and the power of God, your spiritual self, is but your learning of the false, of the ego, and of your attempts to undo the true. That's what the ego's doing, undoing the true. Any comments, questions? Paragraph 2. Be willing then for all of it to be undone, and be glad that you are not bound to it forever. For you have taught yourself how to imprison the Son of God, a lesson so unthinkable that only the insane in deepest sleep could even dream of it. Can God learn how not to be God? And can his Son, given all power by him, learn to be powerless? What have you taught yourself that you can possibly prefer to keep in place of what you have and what you are? So we need to be willing to turn to the Spirit within us, and that will undo all of the ego thinking. We don't have to be bound to the ego forever. We don't have to be imprisoned in the ego. We don't have to be living an insane sleep of dream life in the ego. And then it says, can God learn how not to be God? Well, of course not. And can his Son learn how to be powerless? Well, no. And we are his Son. So we need to undo the ego thinking. Any questions, comments? David?
Yes, yesterday I noticed somebody had something, they were talking to me and I really heard what they were saying. And I felt I had to say something about it. And, I felt like it was coming from, not from ego, but from spirit. But then it went to my head. I says, man, I know everything, I didn't say it out loud, but I felt like my ego like jumped in because I did such a good job of interpreting the situation. And then I realized that it was ego that was, and I wasn't speaking from the wisdom or from the, the inner voice. I was speaking from from ego.
So you were able to realize and distinguish when you were speaking from ego.
Right.
If only to yourself. And that's good. So that means that you're learning. So thank you. So paragraph 3. Atonement teaches you how to escape forever from everything that you have taught yourself in the past by showing you only what you are now. Learning has been accomplished before its effects are manifest. Learning is therefore in the past, but its influence determines the present by giving it whatever meaning it holds for you. Your learning gives the present no meaning at all. Nothing you have ever learned can help you understand the present or teach you how to undo the past. Your past is what you have taught yourself. Let it all go. Do not attempt to understand any event or anything or anyone in its light, for the darkness in which you try to see can only obscure. Put no confidence at all in darkness to illuminate your understanding. For if you do not contradict the light, and thereby think you see the darkness, yet darkness cannot be seen, for it is nothing more than a condition in which seeing becomes impossible. So let's go over that again. Atonement, the movement from ego to spirit and true forgiveness, teaches how to escape from the ego by showing you that you are now a spiritual being. So ego learning, while learning has been accomplished before its effects are manifest. So first you learn, and then the effects become manifest. But learning is in the past, and its influence determines the present. So ego learning gives the present no meaning at all. Nothing you have ever learned in ego can help you understand the present or teach you how to undo the past. Your past is what you have taught yourself in ego. Let it all go. Number 7, just let it go. Do not attempt to understand events or anything or anyone in the darkness of ego, because you can't really see that. It's all obscured. Put no confidence at all in the ego darkness. Darkness cannot be seen. It is nothing more than a condition in which seeing becomes impossible. Any questions, comments? Paragraph 4. You who have not yet brought all of the darkness you have taught yourself into the light in you can hardly judge the truth and value of this course. Yet God did not abandon you. And so you have another lesson sent from him, already learned for every child of light by him to whom God gave it. This lesson shines with God's glory, for in it lies his power, which he shares so gladly with his Son. Learn of his happiness, which is yours. But to accomplish this, all your dark lessons must be brought willingly to truth and joyously laid down by hands open to receive, not closed to take. Every dark lesson that you bring to him who teaches light, he will accept from you because you do not want it. And he will gladly exchange each one for the bright lesson he has learned for you. Never believe that any lesson you have learned apart from him means anything. So you who have not completely switched from ego mind to spirit mind can hardly judge the truth, the spirit, and to fully value this course. Those of us here tonight are in that process. That's why we're here tonight. We're in that process of moving from ego to spirit light. So we're not completely lost. But God has all of the spiritual lessons for us. And it is all within us. We need to learn to turn to the Holy Spirit within ourselves for the answers, because the Holy Spirit within has all of the answers that we need. And so when it says in paragraph 6, but to accomplish this, all your dark lessons, all your ego lessons must be brought willingly to truth, must be willingly brought to the Holy Spirit. We have free will, and Spirit does not impose its will upon us. We have to decide. We have to use our free will to decide to let go of ego and embrace spirit thinking. So that's why it says we need to be willing for the truth. And Holy Spirit will exchange all of our ego thoughts for the spirit thoughts and teach us the truth. Any questions, comments? Paragraph 5. You have one test, as sure as God, by which to recognize if what you learned is true. If you are wholly free of fear of any kind, and if all those who meet or even think of you share in your perfect peace, then you can be sure that you have learned God's lesson and not your own. Unless all this is true, there are dark lessons in your mind that hurt and hinder you and everyone around you. The absence of perfect peace means but one thing. You think you do not will for God's Son what his Father wills for him. Every dark lesson teaches this in one form or another. And each bright lesson with which the Holy Spirit will replace the dark ones you do not accept teaches you that you will with the Father and his Son. Again, we have but one test. Are we wholly free of fear? And are we in perfect peace? That's the test. To the degree that you're still in fear and you're not in peace is the degree to which you're still operating in ego. To the degree that you are without fear and in peace is the degree to which you are in spirit thinking. Any questions, comments?
Yeah, I want to make a comment.
Yes, Terrence.
This verse is really just restating the very first verse of the whole book, which is nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God.
Yes. Thank you. And it really is, and I've said this before, throughout the whole text, the same idea is being repeated over and over and over and over again with different words from different point of views. And the reason for that is because if you study the whole thing, you're bound to get it one way or the other. You may not have understood it in the one paragraph, but then in another paragraph, the language you do understand. So every attempt is being made throughout the course to repeat the same lessons over and over again in different ways so that everybody, no matter what point of view they're coming from, has the opportunity to understand the lesson being given. And thank you, Terrence. Number 6, do not be concerned about how you can learn a lesson so completely different from everything that you have taught yourself? How would you know? Your part is very simple. You need only recognize that everything you learned, you do not want. Ask to be taught, and do not use your experiences to confirm what you have learned. When your peace is threatened or disturbed in any way, say to yourself, I do not know what anything, including this, means, and so I do not know how to respond to it. And I will not use my own past learning as the light to guide me now. So let's go over that again. Do not be concerned about how you can learn a lesson so completely different than you have taught yourself, meaning that your ego self has taught you. How would you know when you're in your ego self? And then it says, when your peace is threatened or disturbed in any way, well, that's how we know. If our peace is disturbed, if we fear, then we know that it's ego. And it's saying at that point, you need to stop and think. I do not know what anything, including this experience I'm having now, that's disturbing my peace and putting me in fear, means. I don't know what it means. And I don't know how to respond to it. And I will not use my own past learning, my ego learning, as a light to guide me now, because it is that ego thinking that has put me into being not at peace and fearful. So I'm not going to turn back to that ego thinking now. I don't know what it means, but I know what not to do, and that is to respond with ego. So what does that mean? Well, not to respond with fear, not to respond with anger, not to respond with hate. Don't be upset in ego and respond with ego. We need to turn to spirit. By this refusal to attempt to teach yourself what you do not know, the guide whom God has given you will speak to you. He will take his rightful place in your awareness the instant you abandon it and offer it to him. In other words, when you're in those situations, turn to the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit will instantly come to you into your awareness. But you have to ask. You have to be willing to align your will with the will of the Father. And the will of the Father is peace, love, understanding. You cannot be your guide to miracles, for it is you who made them necessary. And because you did, the means on which you can depend for miracles has been provided for you. God's Son can make no needs his Father will not meet. But if he but turn to him ever so little, yet he cannot compel his Son to turn to him and remain himself. It is impossible that God lose his identity, for if he did, you would lose yours. And being yours, he cannot change himself, for your identity is changeless. The miracle acknowledges his changelessness by seeing his Son as he always was, and not as he would make himself. The miracle brings the effects that only guiltlessness can bring, and thus establishes the fact that guiltlessness must be. So your ego self cannot guide you into miracles. It's your ego self that made the necessity for miracles. God's Son, that's you, you cannot make any need that the Father cannot meet. And the Father is changeless and eternal and cannot change himself. It's impossible that God lose his identity. We are the sons of God, and we are the same as God. And if he lost his identity, we'd lose ours, but that's impossible. His identity is changeless, and our true identity, our spiritual identity, is also changeless. And his changelessness sees us as we always were, as he created us as spiritual beings. The miracle brings the effect that only guiltlessness can bring. In other words, we can't maintain guilt for all of the ego things. We need to forgive and forget all of that. Yes, we created the ego. Yes, we've lived in fear and anger and hatred and all of that. But we need to let all of that go. We need to embrace our guiltlessness because that's how we were created. We were created guiltless as spiritual beings. And that's what we need to embrace. Any comments, questions?
So it's the guilt that we're in the process of undoing.
Yes.
Okay. And then you cannot, what chapter did you, okay, you cannot be your guide to the miracles, for it is you who made them necessary. So we have made ourselves into ego. We've done ego issues. And then when we're undoing them through releasing guilt, then that's the miracle.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Paragraph 8. How can you, so firmly bound to guilt and committed so to remain, establish for yourself your guiltlessness? That is impossible. But be sure that you are willing to acknowledge that it is impossible. It is only because you think that you can run some little part or deal with certain aspects of your life alone that the guidance of the Holy Spirit is limited. Thus would you make him undependable. and use this fancied undependability as an excuse for keeping certain dark lessons from him. And by so limiting the guidance that you would accept, you are unable to depend on miracles to answer all your problems for you. This is describing a person who's just so holding on to ego that they're not willing to give it up to the Holy Spirit and ask for Holy Spirit's guidance. So this is somebody who's in resistance. Hopefully this paragraph does not apply to you. Hopefully we are beyond this stage. But again, he's exampling somebody who's completely caught in the ego and just doesn't understand that you can just let it go. Helen?
Sorry about that, John.
Okay.
I can relate to this paragraph a lot.
All righty then. Number 9. Do you think that what the Holy Spirit would have you give, he would withhold from you? You have no problems that he cannot solve by offering you a miracle. Miracles are for you. And every fear or pain or trial that you have has been undone. He has brought all of them to light, having accepted them instead of you, and recognized they never were. There is no dark lessons he has not already lightened for you. The lessons you would teach yourself, he has corrected already. They do not exist in his mind at all. For the past binds him not, and therefore binds not you. He does not see time as you do, and each miracle he offers you corrects your use of time and makes it his. From Holy Spirit's point of view, he's looking back from the end of time, and he's seeing that you have always been the spiritual being that you were created to be, and that all of the blah, blah, blah that happened in ego, that was just an illusion. That was just a dream that never really happened. And he sees you as the perfect being that you were created to be, the guiltless being that you were created to be, the loving being, the peaceful being that you were created to be. And that's how Holy Spirit sees you. That's how God the Father sees you. Now you just need to learn to see yourself that way. And when you do, you embrace the miracle. Any comments, questions? Yes, David.
You said it all. Yesterday I was at a birthday party, and there was 4 of us sitting at a table, and everybody was coming from fear. They were talking about things in the news, and they were offering solutions, and I waited till everybody's finished speaking. I thought of the Course in Miracles, and it says, I'm going to make a comment that comes from love rather than fear. The Course really wakes us up when we're ready, so that we can do that. And it changed the whole dynamics of the table, and I didn't realize it at first until I overheard someone talking to my wife about some of the comments I made. I could see the energy change, at least one person in the group. And this course is really, I know, it's called the Course in Miracles, that miracles happen. And a lot of times in life, I don't see the changes by the way I, go when I go to love rather than fear. But I'm convinced that there are changes made, because that it can change, and people have changed, become more loving towards me because of my coming from love, let him see the love side of the equation rather than the fear, or just just keeping quiet. Is almost like saying that I believe in the fear also. We have to speak up, like I said before, come from love. And you said the same thing, John, just different words. And the Course says the same thing in different words, just like you said earlier. It's all there.
Thank
It
you.
just takes time.
Thank you. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Paragraph 10. He who has freed you from the past would teach you you are free of it. He would but have you accept his accomplishments as yours, because he did them for you. And because he did, they are yours. He has made you free of what you made. You can deny him, but you cannot call on him in vain. He will always give his gifts in place of yours. He would establish his bright teaching so firmly in your mind that no dark lesson of guilt can abide in what he has established as holy by his presence. Thank God that he is there and works through you, and all his works are yours. He offers you a miracle with every one you let him do through you. They're talking about the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit has been defined as the voice for God. It's been explained that at the moment that we had the mad thought that we could separate ourselves from God and thus created the ego, that at that very same instant, God created the Holy Spirit to indwell in our minds so that we would always have a firm and true connection to him, which negates the thought that we could separate ourselves from him. So the he here is the Holy Spirit has freed us from the past and would teach us. Holy Spirit would have us accept his accomplishments as our own, because he did them for us, and they are ours. He has made you free of what you made. Holy Spirit has made us free of the ego. And we can deny Holy Spirit, but we cannot call on him in vain. He doesn't care if we deny him or not. That's meaningless to him, because he knows that denial is just coming from ego, and that ego isn't real. It's just a dream. It's an illusion. And he pays that no mind. He establishes his bright teachings firmly in our mind, and no dark lesson of guilt of ego can dissuade him. So we need to thank our Father that Holy Spirit is there and works through us. Holy Spirit offers us a miracle with every one that we let him do through us. The miracle comes through us. The miracle of forgiveness. The miracle of letting go of the ego. The miracle of realizing our guiltlessness. The miracle of embracing peace and joy and love. Paragraph 11. God's Son will always be indivisible. There's only one of us. As we are held as one in God, so do we learn as one in Him. God's teacher is as like to his Creator as is his Son, and through his teacher does God proclaim his oneness and his Son's. Listen in silence and do not raise your voice against him, for he teaches the miracle of oneness, and therefore his lesson division disappears. Teach like him here, and you will remember that you have always created like your Father. The miracle of creation has never ceased, having the holy stamp of immortality upon it. This is the will of God for all creation, and all creation joins in willing this. We are indivisible. There's only one of us. And God's teacher, that's the Holy Spirit, is like God himself, is like us. There's only one of us. And the teaching proclaims God's oneness and our oneness with God. So listen in silence and accept the voice of God within you. And allow the miracle to work through you. For creation has never ceased. The miracle of creation has never ceased. Any comments, questions? Paragraph 12. Those who remember always that they know nothing and who have become willing to learn everything will learn it. But whenever they trust themselves, they will not learn. They have destroyed their motivation for learning by thinking that they already know. Think not you understand anything until you pass the test of perfect peace. For peace and understanding go together and never can be found alone. Each brings the other with it. For it is the law of God, they be not separate. They are cause and effect, each to the other. So where one is absent, the other cannot be. So be someone who remembers that they know nothing in the ego mind, and be willing to learn from the Holy Spirit. And remember that the test is peace and lack of fear. And then you'll know. If you're in peace and you fear nothing, then you know you're with Spirit. Paragraph 12. No, that we just read that. Paragraph 13. Only those who recognize they cannot know unless the effects of understanding are with them can really learn it all. For this, it must be peace they want and nothing else. Whenever you think you know, peace will depart from you because you have abandoned the teacher of peace. Whenever you fully realize that you know not, peace will return, for you will have invited him to do so by abandoning the ego on behalf of him. Call not upon the ego for anything. It is only this that you need do. The Holy Spirit will, of himself, fill every mind that so makes room for him. The Holy Spirit will, of himself, fill every mind that so makes room for him. If you want peace, you must abandon the teacher of attack. The teacher of peace will never abandon you. You can desert him, but he will never reciprocate. For his faith in you is his understanding. It is as firm as his faith in his Creator. And he knows that faith in his Creator must encompass faith in his creation. In this consistency lies his holiness, which he cannot abandon, for it is not his will to do so. With your perfection ever in sight, he gives the gift of peace to everyone who perceives the need for peace and who would have it. Make way for peace, and it will come. For understanding is in you, and from it peace must come. For the Spirit is within you, and from it peace must come. Again, just abandon the ego spirit, the ego thinking, and make way for the Holy Spirit to fill the gap. The last paragraph, number 15. The power of God, from which they both arise, is yours as surely as it is his. You think you know him not, only because, alone, it is impossible to know him. Yet see the mighty works that he will do through you, and you must be convinced you did them through him. It is impossible to deny the source of effects so powerful they could not be of you. Leave room for him, and you will find yourself so filled with power that nothing will prevail against your peace. And this will be the test by which you recognize that you have understood. Starting again, the power of God the Father, from which they both arise, that's you and the Holy Spirit, is yours as surely as it is the Holy Spirit's. Leave room for him, for the Holy Spirit, and you will find yourself so filled with power that nothing will prevail against your peace. And this will be the test by which you recognize that you have understood that you are a spiritual being. We have reached the end of our reading for today. Any questions, comments? Yes, David. Oh, Helen, go ahead, Helen.
Again, John, thank you so much. There's so much uplifting within these paragraphs. Is just beautiful for me. It's uplifting. I feel there's so much insight and understanding, and hope.
That's great.
Yeah, I love it.
Very good. Anyone else care to speak? David?
Yeah, as we were going through, I was thinking most traditions say the same thing, but I often don't see it in practice. I do see it in practice sometimes, but I wonder what is missing, that we don't all become one.
You asking me?
Anybody wants to answer?
I mean, we are in the process of understanding our oneness. You know, everybody is along the path. All roads lead to God. No matter what it seems, from the ego's point of view, it may not seem that way, but from Spirit's point of view, there's only one of us, and all roads lead back to God. So we're all on the journey, and we just do it as the best that we can individually.
Yes.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
keep practicing. Practice, practice, practice.
Yes, just keep at it. Just keep at it. Marlene, did you care to say anything?
No, thank you. I understood
Very
a
good.
lot. Yes, I'm happy because I'm learning English, and I mean, in other language is no, this book is already difficult. Okay, and in another language, it's gonna be maybe more difficult. But I understood, and I like the way you have integrated the course. Yes. I mean, I don't want to speak about the ego, but I congratulate you because you have understood the course. I mean, it's with few hours, with few minutes. I know that you are very profound and that you practice the course. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. You know that the course has been translated into many languages.
Yes.
I'm sure you can get a copy of it in your native language.
No, I have it. I have it. I have it.
Okay, good.
I have it in English and in Spanish.
Oh, good. Okay,
Wow,
very good.
it's amazing.
Yes. All right.
Thank you.
Well, yes, Helen? Did you
Nope,
wish?
I'm good. No, I'm good.
Okay. So let's have a moment of silence and we will stop our recording for today.